Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. Today we have an amazing cast of folks here. We see Rita, Danielle, and Kote. Thank you guys for joining us today. We'd love to keep this as interactive as possible. So if you have any comments or questions, please submit them below during the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them live and through the chat throughout today's presentation. Without further ado, let's hand this off to today's speakers. Rita?
All right, thanks AJ, and welcome everyone. I'm really excited today because I get to talk to two people who I actually consider friends first and colleagues second. We've been working together for a long time. And we're gonna talk to you a little bit about this thing that we did earlier this year. It's called the State of Cloud Native App Platform Survey. It is an evolution of what we used to call the State of Kates or State of Kubernetes survey. We decided this year to change the focus a little bit, to expand it beyond just Kubernetes and to look at the entirety of the cloud native computing ecosystem. Many of you might also know that Kubernetes turned 10 this year, so we're seeing a lot of things kind of, I don't want to say congeal because that's kind of a key word sometimes, but really start to standardize and refocus. So, we asked a bunch of new questions this year, but we kept some questions. So some things definitely have changed, but some haven't. The thing we haven't changed are the demographics, right? If you look, who we're asking large organizations with 1,000 plus employees, and more often than not, they function in highly regulated industries. So that's kind of who we're looking at. So I think we got about 760 responses. So anyway, so that's where we're at today. Today we're going to go over the results and talk a little bit about how they are shaping our strategy for delivering Tanzu Platform. As a group, and even the three of us here, we've spent a long time talking about the people aspect of the technology problem, if you will, which us three specifically, I would say, have spent a lot of time talking about it. We all three came over from Pivotal. Danielle worked on the Pivotal Labs marketing for many years, so she really understands that part. But in all these years, one thing that I felt like we haven't really honed is talking about the impact of platform on behavior, which is what drives your culture. So I think we don't want to dismiss the role of technology and platform in changing your culture. It does have a hand. I think Kote said it in a blog post recently that platforms won't fix your broken culture, but broken platforms will break your fixed culture. So the same's true is in the reverse, I would say. I don't know, Kote, if you want to say anything about that, but that's something that popped out to me.
Yeah, I think definitely those two things go hand in hand, right? That if you have a good way of using your tools and a process and the way you go about doing things, and then you also have good tools, it's more of a virtuous cycle than just some more logical if one than the other. So they're both important to have mixed together well.
Totally. So can we go to the next slide? So, we wanted to make sure we checked ourselves, right? So we used the attributes and definitions from the CNCF Platforms white paper. It was published last year, and here it is. So when we talk about platforms or cloud native platforms, this is what we're talking about, right? It's integrated capabilities. It's giving people the resources in a self-service manner as well. I don't know if that's in there, but that's how we think of it. So yeah, I don't know if anybody wants to add to that, but we can move on if nobody else has anything to say about this.
Yeah, well, I think to highlight a few things you said, right? The idea of a platform is you have all these tools that you need to not only like build and architect your application, but also to run them. And when it comes to running an application, except for maybe a handful of companies that don't exist, something's always going to go wrong. And so you'd also need a way of monitoring it and taking care of it. And really unifying all that stuff together, as we'll see, like that integrated thing, as you said, Rita, I think that's one of the key things that makes it a platform versus like, an exciting bucket of parts. But having it all fit together purposely, I think is key to the idea of what a platform is. And what you see here in the delicious burger from the CNCF.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one more piece that goes back to the culture theme that you touched upon earlier, Rita, is that I think a really fantastic app platform touches multiple teams, right? It's not just for one team, it's bringing teams together in a way that helps them collaborate and breaks down those silos, as we say in the industry.
All right. All right, let's get into it. Let's get into some numbers. Ooh, look at this one. Cote, I know that you picked out some of these gems. Talk to us a little bit about this one.
Well, so the first two things to go over, and I think I mean this is what's good to do in surveys about a technology. Like you said, we've been doing the survey for depending on how you count it, I don't know, 5-6 years or so. And I think as we'll get into the next slide, it's great to have year-over-year comparison of what's been happening, but also as far as like the benefits that you get, or to use business speak, the outcomes that you achieve. But you know, again, the benefits, the good stuff that happens. I think with over that course of 5 or 6 years, we know what a cloud platform is and how it's used, especially in large organizations, has changed and evolved and you know morphed around a bit. And so it's good to track: is it getting better? Is it improving? Or like, is this actually working out? Because that's, you know, to be a little I don't know, insidery tech company, like one of the things when you have a technology like this as it evolves is you're trying to figure out what you might call product market fit, which is to say, is this useful? And is there someone who could use this thing? And so these two charts that we've been looking at, or I should say charts made up of responses to our survey, are kind of getting at that point of validating, like, is this a good idea in the first place? And this year and last year, we started asking more about the, I guess you could call it the business benefits as we do, but I would think about it as, you know, it's not necessarily asking like this, did this increase your EBITDA and your revenue and things like that directly, but it's more like, are these the kind of ways of operating your business that would be beneficial for you, right? Is it more efficient for operations people to do their job? Are developers being more productive? And then of course there's like, you know, maybe your customer, it doesn't really care so much about this, but you sure do, showing that there's actual value to the job that you're doing to your bosses. And, you know, I won't read through all of them, as exciting as that would be, but what you can see here is starting with last year, you know, most of these metrics have pretty good results, right? But more importantly, like why I like year over year and multi-year surveys is you can see that they're not going down, which is good. That's the wrong way for numbers like this to go. And so I think there's a general, like what I would take away from this, right, is intuitively, I think most people, at least that we would talk with, are like, oh yeah, cloud native platforms, great idea. We should do that, or we're already doing it. But it is good to have more than just your intuition about it, right? To have some, from those 760 odd, however many respondents there were, you can see that they're getting benefit from it. So hopefully next year, we'll continue to see the not going in the wrong direction sort of trajectory here. But, you know, and finally, like, I think looking at the developer productivity and the IT operators are more efficient, you know, that's probably for most organizations as close as you're going to get to a consistent way to measure business value, is that let's say the resources that you're spending to run the business are not being done in a kind of wasted, sort of like juicy, kind of fatty way. They're nice and lean, they're operating well, and you know, you can show the value of it.
Yeah, I would also imagine, Cote, that as a result of being more productive and, you know, really realizing some efficiencies, is being able to spend time on new revenue driving experiences that's on there, right? Like lower down on the chart. But that to me is the important thing, is being able to add either new features or new apps altogether, new experiences altogether that are going to be revenue generating. And the quicker you can get them out there, you know, the sooner you can start, you know, generating revenue from them. So,
yeah. And I think, you know, and to your point, right? Like in a lot of like organizations I talk with, like their first priority is they need to get their kind of like software delivery, their application strategy up to a good mature adult responsible level of operating, right? So they need that efficiency in doing things well, but well, maybe not obviously, but hopefully, maybe in the next sort of phase of what they're doing, they also want to actually improve the way the business is functioning, not just only with its existing way of doing things, but by coming up with new things and new products and offerings and things like that, which is, that's like I would say the medium term value of a platform is you can start to be good at software or better.
Well, and then on top of that, look at, again, profit margins are increasing. Yeah, when you're more efficient and more quick and more, being able to get things more quickly, it's going to cost you less, right? This is the beauty of platforms and, frankly, standardization, is that being able to do the same thing over and over again, right? Scaling doesn't end up costing you so much because you've got it in there. It's very factory like, if you will, but that's how you do it. When you do the same, once you figure out that you're doing the same thing over and over again, then you can, we can get technical, get into automation and all that stuff. But you see how this all ends up working out, right? New experiences, better brand, your brand gets better, you get better at doing it, right? You get better at delivering software more quickly or features more quickly. It costs you less to do it. And then it costs you less.
For sure.
So anyway, lots of great things there we can dig into. But I don't know if you had mentioned the next slide. Do we want to take a quick peek at that one? Or anything else?
And then like I was saying, the next one to look at, and this was, we've asked these questions, as you can see, many more years, but these are like what I would call the technical benefits. We used to just call them benefits before we started asking about business benefits, but now we've got to distinguish between the two. And these are, again, there's a little bit of an overlap, but these are ones that I think I like putting together this chart each year. I mean, there's all sorts of things in my life I like better, but when I'm doing work things like this, I enjoy putting this chart together because it shows you, again, like I was saying, is the idea of like a platform, of a cloud native platform, is it actually delivering on what we have and or on what's being promised? And here there's a lot more interesting, well, there's a few more things interesting to read into this or to speculate about it than the previous one. And hopefully, just to be a little bit of I don't know how to read a chart annoying professor, right? Like what's interesting about like multi-year ones is like when they're very kind of like little mountains on their side like this, when they're going up and down, right? And so you want to like for example, let's look at the top one, right? So improve resource utilization. Now all the way back into I don't know what year, into containers and cloud native, just as with virtualization before that, like one of the huge promises of a cloud native platform is that you can more efficiently pack more apps or more containers into one computational unit, one server or whatever, right? So kind of like you were saying, Rita, the kind of bigger effect of this is that at the very least, you can do the same with less, right? So you're more efficient with what you're doing. And so that, like, it's great that that's the thing that over the years has been the biggest benefit for platforms, right? That you actually do improve your resource utilization. If that was not the case, we probably wouldn't have done this survey for so long because cloud native platforms wouldn't have survived. And then, the other thing that I like to look at, there's lots here, but I like software development and applications. So I've looked at that a little further down, the shortened software development cycles over the years, right? And to a limited extent, containerized monolithic applications, but I'll just pay attention to the software development cycles. So the other thing, as you were talking about, Rita, that cloud native platforms have, I don't know, sort of promised over the years at a business level is like you will be able to get better at software. And the way you'll be able to get better at software is to ship it more than once a year. I mean, that's a bit hyperbolic, but you'll be able to ship it frequently. And so one, if cloud native platforms are good, we would expect them to be more efficient with resources. Two, well, we want to improve our business, which means we need to improve the way we do software. So shorter software development cycles in general are better, so that should be improving. So in general, if you were to take any one of these years without the other 4, if I did that math correctly, bars, things would look okay, right? But it gets interesting when you add those other charts in. And I'll give you my general read of what's going on here is, so you see with shortened software development cycles, way back when in 2020, what a month long that was.
Right,
things are great.
2021. I was looking at the 2021 ones, right? Like, oh, what happened there?
That's right. And so there's almost this is that I don't know how you describe, I guess that's convex, right? Like there's a bowl that's going that way. And you know, with surveys, you kind of do a lot of this kind of speculation and then kind of verify it with anecdotes and things like that. But like my sense of why we see this convexation is essentially, if you remember back in 2020, not that many people used Kubernetes or cloud native platforms. Lots of people talked about it, but it wasn't in wide use. And as you get more and more mainstream use, you have more people who, if you know the kind of one of the ideas of the spread of innovations in technology is that like the early adopters or the people who are using it are very tolerant of putting up with stuff, and they put in a lot of extra work to make it work. But then you go enter it in mainstream use, which is to say, in a good way, normal people, and they are not. They have other stuff to do, and so I don't know. That's kind of how I've thought about that kind of dip, if you will, over the years. And so what's important is like it goes all the way down to 39% in 2022, but then it starts to creep back up as people start to learn how to use platforms more, and it actually gets to be beneficial. So that's kind of like what finally, like what I would look at like next year is, again, are these going in the right direction, right? Like at the very least, like it'd be cool if the top one stayed at 50%. Maybe that's as good as it's going to get, right? But definitely when it comes to software development cycles being shorter, I feel like that's like the best kind of result that you would have for all of the effort you would put to putting a platform in place. So hopefully that will continue to go up, if not go up more.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that you homed in on the lower questions there, because I thought containerizing monolithic applications was an interesting trend, right? People were like, let's containerize all the things, you know, let's lift and shift. And so people were just getting a little excited. And I know we've seen that in the lift and shift value kind of, you know, people were scrutinizing a little bit more to see if that's a thing. So I homed in on those as well, because yeah, that's changed.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think a lot of people are paying more attention to what apps should be containerized and what just needs to be left alone. You know, if it's not broken, don't fix it. And then the other trend that we're seeing too, that may or may not have influenced the survey results too much this year, but possibly next year, is we're seeing a lot of money and energy and time investment that was going towards some of these modernization efforts being, you know, shifted over to AI related initiatives. And so there's just funding that was being really focused on like get to cloud, containerize, like some of that is being parsed off for other initiatives. So we'll see what happens next year with that.
Awesome. Anything else? That's it. All right, next way.
So then the next one here, this is I guess we've only asked this maybe 1 year. I forget, but we only put together this chart for it. Is I think you know, it's always interesting, especially if you're in our business, but also if you're the type of people we work with, to know what priorities, how to prioritize, as Danielle was saying, your budget. You have a finite amount of budget. Are you going to spend it on AI or like containers or both or what, right? Like how and narrow down to platforms, right? Like I think an interesting way to look at platforms, you know, you've got your what's the fancy term for it? Your stated preferences and then your revealed preferences. And we're not quite thinking fast, thinking slow, clever enough to like, you know, put that into the survey. But I think a good proxy for that is to ask people what they think is worth paying for, because, you know, I don't know about you two or other people listening, but generally I pay for things that I think are valuable, and things I don't think are valuable, I try not to pay for. And so like here you can see kind of a ranking of what is valuable, what priorities exist. You could also kind of say like what needs to be paid for, right? Like what are deficiencies to fill in. But I think enough over time, there are many ways of building out your platform. And I think more of what you're seeing here are the priorities, what's important. So, you know, at the top of every list, like Rita and I don't know if joke is a responsible way of putting it, but we joke about this every now and then, that like security is always the number one thing. And to such an extent that like nowadays, I'm just like, just kind of like the first pancake you make, you just throw that out. Not that security is not important or that first pancake isn't delicious, but it's just like, it's always going to be there. Don't worry about it, right? Like, so what's more interesting is what comes after that, which, you know, you can look through there. But the other thing that's fun about this question is that we also split it up by if you're a budget or technology decision maker. And if you look at the criteria for that, that's basically like you're an executive or someone who decides on budget or who has a lot of influence on budget, that is buying things, or you're not a decision maker, which now that I think of it, that sounds kind of like a pejorative sort of thing, but that's fine. Although it could be relaxing.
Practitioner. No, they're practitioners. They're the ones doing this stuff.
There you go. No, I was just thinking like I would aspire to not be a decision maker. That sounds relaxing. But what's interesting to look at, to compare those two is, so what do individuals think is worth paying for versus management? And why in this context, I think that's very interesting, is because one of the biggest strategic decisions you can make with the platform is deciding, are we going to build this platform on our own and maintain and monitor it and manage it and everything, or are we going to buy a platform, which of course us three care about the right way to answer that question. But looking at that, coming into this chart with that question, like what it makes me think is that management is willing to pay for things a lot more than individuals in most all of these categories, right? And again, I'm kind of speculating here or just kind of like thinking out loud, but it makes me think that back when I was an individual developer, like I pretty much knew how to use the platform that I had. I could learn how to do it, but I only knew that one platform, and that was my whole experience, because that's what you want your application developers to focus on. But if you're in more of a management role, you know about not only all the developers, but all the different platforms that you have, all the different things that you're doing in your entire portfolio. And at that point, you're very, because of all the, you know, those gains that we were looking at, you're very much willing to trade money for time, basically, or people's effort and resources. And it really pays off to just pay to have something fixed rather than owning that thing that's probably not very, it's important to have, but not important to have distinction in. There's no competitive advantage in like securing your application. I mean, back to the first pancake thing, like you just don't exist if your application's not secure. So you have to have that, but like you're not going to like, you know, distinguish your antiperspirant based on your security handling, or like, you know, your ability to sell like online movie tickets based on how well you do security stuff. So I think it's important to take those resources that you had, like you were saying, Rita, and focus on better product, and therefore buying these things. And I don't know, I think that's why you see the kind of the big gap between these two roles in an organization.
Yeah, and we talk about it later, but when you were talking to here, I'm just thinking, oh my head, all I'm hearing is platform engineering, in that when we talk about buy or build, right? Like you can buy a platform, however, platform engineers are the ones who are going to be caring and feeding, right, of that platform, because it's going to need to be, I don't want to say the word customized, but it's going to need to be tweaked a little bit for your specific needs, your specific requirements, and even within your own organization. Like say you're in a highly regulated industry, right? You have specific compliance and regulations that you have to meet. So, and then within your own organization, and there's different teams that are using the platform, and they have different requirements. So even if you buy, there's still a lot of internal building that's going to happen, which I think makes the practitioners, the non-decision makers, but the practitioners, I don't feel like they're doing something, right? Like it's not you buy something anymore, right? Like there's still a lot of great work to be done.
Yeah,
that's fun work, right? It's valuable work, as we talk about, right? It's not toil. It's actually and doing those things at scale.
Yeah, it's a great point that I don't think about or mention that much. Is you'll have plenty of non-differentiating integration work to do without having to worry about like the basics of, you know, identity and access control and certificate management, and you know how you template out your applications and things like that. It'll be more important to worry about you know, the beautiful mess that you have that's unique and valuable to you.
All right.
Yeah, absolutely. And then looking at the kind of the delta between, decision makers and practitioners and how they're prioritizing these different components. I mean, to me, the security one stands out. It's like if you have such a gap in that prioritization of security when it comes to practitioners, you probably don't want those practitioners to be the ones responsible for your security, right? Like that should be something that is really maintained and squarely in the domain of the decision makers, managed by a platform in a standardized way, because the folks who don't care about it really probably shouldn't be responsible for it, and they probably it's just not within their scope or their remit. They're not experts in it. So
exactly.
Yeah. I'm all about like
you're speaking my language.
Yeah, when it comes to building it into processes, but don't shift the burden of that left onto developers in a very like manual way.
Exactly. Awesome. All right. Next slide, I think. What do we got? What's coming up? Oh, yes. Multiple. One of the things we saw, and it's funny because we got feedback from some of our power users about multiple platforms being used, right? That's something we called it platform proliferation. It's funny to say, it's like a quote the alliteration. Platform proliferation persists. So let's talk about this a little bit more. When you see this, what are you thinking about, Kote?
So the different types, or the way these are grouped together is there was some questions that were going over, like what types of platforms do you have, and so basically the answers are, we've got multiple different types, and it's a shame it only goes up to 4, because I bet, especially with lots of the organizations we talk with, it would be like 20 or more if we went up high enough. But what you see here is, so first of all, this is looking at the challenges when it comes to building or adopting platforms, as the title says. So hurdles, frictions, problems, annoyances, those sorts of things that people are worrying about as they're putting platforms in place. And then what we do is we go through and we cut it by the another question that I just went over, the number of platforms in that organization, or I should say the number of types of different platforms. And then that gives you some more interesting charts to play around with. And it should kind of jump out at this point, especially with that first one, that security, like I said, always an issue. So that's going to be number 1 for a lot of people. And then you go down to like integrating and all these other things, right? So it's not too unexpected that these things would be challenging. But really what happens is when you get 4 or more platforms, you see this huge jump in a lot of those numbers, the blue color. And my theory here is that, and not that I came up with this, I think it's pretty obvious, but the theory here is that like one of the points of a platform is that you are introducing consistency, which is to say you're standardizing and you're centralizing things. You have as few ways as possible of doing things, architecting your applications, deploying them, managing them, all the stuff that goes into there. So you have less stuff to deal with, right? But if you have more and more platforms, more and more different types of platforms, you're removing those benefits of simplifying, basically. You're complexifying, to join in your alliteration fun stuff. And so I think that's what you see here is, if you have more platforms in your organization, chances are you're going to have more problems putting platforms in place. And I think that as the last thing to say there, I think there's a notion in platform engineering that I forget if it was introduced in team topologies or somewhere else in the lore, but there's this idea of like cognitive dissonance and cognitive friction. And that's I think as Danielle put it at some point, that's basically just like banging your head up against a brick wall, is just like dealing with all of this variation, learning things, the complexity. And that happens in IT all the time. You've just got lots of stuff. And so one of the major benefits of a platform is to have less bricks in the wall. I don't know if that analogy works, but to have like less stuff that you're dealing with, and to know only that one thing. So I think that's what's going on here in this chart, is that the more variation you have, the less consistency you have, and the more hassles that you end up having across these categories.
Yep. More
Yeah, I mean, it
platforms,
just
more problems.
introduces so much more, yeah, more platforms, more problems. It introduces so much more risk for an organization, especially for those central teams that are trying to take care of everyone. Uh, it's a
It's also
massive,
interesting to me that the
yeah,
top
Wild
two
West.
are that require the security and data requirements. Again, we talked earlier about like what is on everyone's list that people are concerned with or want to spend money on. Security is always number one, if not number two. Another one that's always there, data. Access to data, consistent access to data, access to consistent data, all that stuff. So it's pretty. There was no surprises, but it's interesting to see this. How much more it jumps like after three, boom. So okay. Next slide. Oh yeah. All right. So we said we were going to
Yeah.
talk a little bit about what we're doing with Tanzu Platform and where we're at. I guess it's been a couple months now, several weeks since we, I don't want to say reintroduced, but yeah, reintroduced Tanzu Platform. And Danielle worked a lot on that. I don't know if you want to tell us a little bit about how you are thinking about the Tanzu
Yeah.
Platform and what we've learned here, you know?
Yeah, thanks, Rita. Yeah, absolutely. So we've kind of been talking about Tanzu Platform starting even as early as last year at Explore in Las Vegas, 2023, and this spring we, have we're finally able to kind of introduce our vision. It's real now. It's happening, and it's based on kind of these three key pillars, and I'll walk through kind of how Tanzu is approaching the app platform landscape, and how we see, what we see a platform, how it fits into our customers' workflows and teams, and kind of what it needs to do to be successful. So our approach really at a high level for Tanzu is we think about an app platform's role as really being focused on removing friction with integrations and, as Cote mentioned, standardization, standardized automation even, that really spans across the software lifecycle. So from the time when a developer has written their business logic to pushing that code to production, and then on to like scaling and all the day two operations for both the applications, but also continued management of the platform itself, and the optimization of the cost and performance and security, all these ongoing concerns. So if you kind of break that down into three phases, in the develop phase, our tenants here, really the Tanzu platform is all about helping platform engineering teams provide a great developer experience, and really simplify things for the developer. And the way Tanzu does this is with abstractions and very simple commands that make it easy for developers, to do things like automate a secure container build, self-provision and bind services to their applications, things like messaging or caching, databases being built into the platform. So they're just, it's just a self-service that they can just go. It's almost like a feature of the platform. They can just go and get it when they need it. And then, a platform should really give developers like a very secure and consistent path to production. We've talked about golden paths a lot in the past, and this is kind of that one standardized way of getting your code to prod without the need for any kind of manual configuration. We really believe strongly that an app platform should empower developers to focus on writing code. Like that's what's going to differentiate your business. It's the business logic. It's not the configuration of the infrastructure or the container build. So that is really what that develop box is all about. Next, moving through into kind of operate, another core tenet of ours is that an app platform should be able to dynamically translate the application's needs to the infrastructure. So, maybe that includes high availability or multi-region deployments, encryption, auto scaling. It's like rather than spending the time to build rigid blueprints to templatize these infrastructure configurations, what you really want is for these application requirements to be dynamically understood by the infrastructure so that you can just run your applications and make changes to the app or even to the underlying infrastructure without disruption. Because the platform is there as this layer in between that's helping you kind of automatically manage these updates and changes and make sure that the application is getting what it needs. And then, once an application is deployed, of course, that's just the beginning almost, because there's this, ongoing management. And, if you're working in on a very dynamic application with a lot of updates and things, you might be looking at scaling and optimizing not only the application, but then also the platform itself, keeping things up to date, keeping things patched and secure. So, a cloud native platform should really make it easy to enforce things like cloud native security best practices, making the platform kind of secure by default, allowing you to do rolling updates and allowing you to kind of have self-healing capabilities so that your apps are always up to date and you're not worried about, patching and fixing CVEs from months ago. All of this built-in automation and standardization makes operations really, really efficient. And as you can see, we have a handful of customers. On this slide, we have many, many, many more Tanzu Platform customers using both Tanzu for Cloud Foundry and Tanzu for Kubernetes. But this is a proven and mature approach that we found is really working for a lot of very large organizations. And if you go to the next slide, I get a little bit deeper. I don't want to spend too much time on all the features because there's a lot of them. And just touching on those key tenets of Tanzu Platform, this diagram goes into kind of the depth of capabilities, but it's not meant to be completely comprehensive. I'll highlight a few things though. So Tanzu Platform has these, as we say, kind of app-aware runtimes based on Cloud Foundry or on Kubernetes, and both of these are designed to be dynamically provision your infrastructure, as I mentioned before, so that as your intents and conditions change, you're not sacrificing, your business continuity. Developers get a very centralized system that they use to do, container builds, enforce standardization, scanning, things that are really important to security, SBOM reporting, for example. And like I said earlier, there are built-in data services out of the box, so centrally managed and scaled to app needs. And we also, allow our teams, if they want, to surface external brokered services. So developers get access to a lot of the services they need, probably all the services they need, as well as open source app components, and that's in a customized catalog powered by Bitnami, Tanzu Application Catalog. And then for our Java developers, Tanzu Spring is built into the platform. So we have commercial support for Spring, long-time symbiotic relationship between Cloud Foundry and Spring, first, VMware at Pivotal and now at Broadcom. And the Spring features built into the platform really support things that are very important to resiliency and performance and enhanced security for those Spring applications. So we're pretty excited about what we can offer Spring developers with Tanzu Platform. And there's, like I mentioned, significant built-in manageability in Tanzu Platform. So there are new capabilities that give operations teams much more visibility from the apps all the way down to the infrastructure and across environments. And this is allowing teams, especially centralized teams with large portfolios that they're looking after, to do a lot of troubleshooting, allowing for very secure OS distributions and patching. There's a lot here. And at the end of the day, it really comes down to Tanzu offering an integrated solution that makes it really easy for developers to get their code to production, and really efficient for our operations teams to manage and meet those business SLAs.
Yep.
And I think, oh yeah, go ahead, Rita.
No, finish.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, you know, on the next slide, I kind of come back to the platform engineering and culture and skills piece, because you know, while we have this amazing platform, the Tanzu platform, technology is just one piece of the solution. You know, there's people running this platform and people who need to use it, and so if you have to think about how you're, you know, going to like basically build this platform in a way that makes your development teams want to use it. And you have to think about treating your platform like a product. And this is an approach that Tanzu helped pioneer as pivotal. And we've helped so many customers adopt this approach of treating your platform like a product, introducing designers and product management functions into platform teams. So they are actually interacting with those app teams that they service to build services and make a platform a really desirable place to run their applications, and not just this like top-down mandate that, you know, never seems to go very well and often results in some shadow IT, as we like to say. So, you know, I think it's just really important that people think about this if they aren't already. I think many organizations are already spinning up platform engineering functions, but it's not, it shouldn't just be, you know, platform engineering can be so much more than just kind of a new name for existing teams. I think there are opportunities to really expand how you think about your platform and how you think about your users to help you drive adoption and make your platform a place where people want to go. So that's something that, you know, is really key to Tanzu's approach to platforms, is looking at the people piece of it and helping our customers learn these new approaches and adopt best practices around platform engineering.
Yeah. I was going to say at the onset, when you're talking about culture and mindset, you know, one of the questions we asked this year, because I was just like, I'm going to ask about this, because what is, and when we were talking about the definition of cloud native, I was like, okay, what do people even think when they hear cloud native? And, you know, 40% of the respondents said it's a mindset, right? We had a technical thing and a way you do things thing. I can't remember what the three options were, but, and those were higher, but the fact that 40% were like, it's totally a mindset, right? Really spoke volumes to me. But as we said, you know, culture really important, platform really important, because if you have the right culture and you give people the wrong tools, I had an analyst once say to me, well, a fool with a tool is still a fool, right? So it is looking at it more holistically. And the two of you, I know, you know, again, through the years have talked and written and done webinars all about this stuff multiple times. I mean, Kote's the DevOps days guy, right? I mean, I kind of feel, and I don't, tell me, correct me if I'm wrong here, when I think of platform engineering, I see it as a manifestation of DevOps.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think the way to kind of mix those two things together, as Danielle was getting to, is, you know, if once you introduce product management and thinking about your platform as a product, and therefore also design, and you're really making that product for customers, for developers, I think that's the main thing that makes platform engineering something evolved from you know, what DevOps and SRE and everything else was. You know, everything's always, what do they say, a continuum, a gradient, or whatever. but that is the most distinct, I would say the most important thing to pay attention to, is having product management in there and running your platform like a product.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. And it works. I mean, as the next slide shows, I'll wait till we get to it, but we worked with Enterprise Strategy Group. We commissioned a study to survey our Tanzu platform customers and see kind of how things are going for them. And we found that, you know, a lot of these very large, sophisticated enterprise IT teams who are using Tanzu platform, but have also had other platforms, you know, they're finding that even though they're very good at, maybe they may be very sophisticated and good at doing DIY, they're still getting much better results with Tanzu platform. And so, you know, lower development costs and faster time to market, all these really impressive metrics that you know,
I don't think
any team would want to see.
Yeah.
Right?
I don't think we're highlighting it today, but we asked folks if they built their own, how long it took, and most, it took more than 7 months, almost a year. And you know, again, I mean, do we need to say, oh, things are moving so fast today? I feel like everything I read starts with, in today's, you know, fast-paced software delivery world. Yes, we know things are moving fast. Yeah, and you can't spend 9 months building a platform and then like however more months after that will you get value. Whereas again, if it's already put together for you, but again, you still have the ability to customize it per your organization's needs and different teams' needs. So
Yeah.
And also to add on to you know, what you're saying there, Rita, is like that you know, between 6 and 12 months to kind of build out and get your first applications on there, like that also becomes important when there's something new that you need to do, like, you know, AI stuff, right? Like it could take you that amount of time to add that new feature in. Whereas if you have, again, if you're kind of centralizing everyone in the industry's efforts around a platform, very sort of like not really differentiating thing for any individual company, then you get the benefit of when those people like us who provide the platform for you, they add in AI functionality or add in, you know, more support for the programming languages you have or the databases, rather than having to spin up another 6-month, another 12-month project before you get the ROI of it.
Yep, exactly. You're ready to go. Yeah.
Yeah. Next slide. We're getting close.
Yeah, I think
All right.
I think we've covered it.
That's great. Yeah. And you know, we've got tons of other folks looking at this and analyzing it. We have a piece coming out. Just if you follow any of us on any of the various channels or LinkedIn or Twitter, now known as X, I feel like I have to say that. All those things, you'll get to read them. We have, you know, again, a group of power users. We asked them for some feedback, and a lot of the things they said just validated what we're thinking here and what we found from this survey. Any other things we want to highlight or ask folks to chime in? Oh,
Well, I think
check out the full report. There's lots of great stuff in there.
Yeah, and I would say also, you know, Rita mentioned some things that we didn't go over, and I think over the years also, as I kind of alluded to in some of those charts, like I think if you're either putting a cloud native platform strategy or program, or just getting a platform in place to be more colloquial about it, or you're kind of like figuring out the current state that you have, a survey like this is good for figuring out what's normal and kind of like what other people are doing and what they prioritize. So like it's more than just sort of like usage patterns that are out there. It's something that you can start to use to think about how you're doing your platform work and kind of rate the current platform work that you have. So yeah, there's a few more questions in there that are useful. And if you're like me, you should also go peruse past years. It's good bedtime reading, you know, for when you wake up late at night and you just can't get back to sleep. Get more charts.
Coach, I don't know. I feel like I between the two of us, right? The years that we've done this, I think you've written about every single one of these for the past 4 years. So you're the guy to ask how things have changed. So thank you so much for agreeing to do this. Your perspective is really quite valuable as a watcher, a longtime watcher of these trends and this space, right? Again, you've been doing this for quite a while, the two of us.
Yeah, well, it's always fun.
This has been great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks Danielle, and thanks everybody for joining. Again, reach out. I don't know. You can take us out, AJ.
All right, we just want to say thank you again. Very special thank you to Rita, Danielle, and Kote for joining us today. And most of all, thanks to all of you guys for watching. We're happy to share links in the chat. You guys will probably see some of the links to this report and maybe to some of the previous reports for some of the future bedtime reading as recommended by Kote. But thank you guys all. Have a great week.
Bye.
For everybody.
Bye.
Bye.